Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Innovation Debrief 2022 LinkedIn Live. My name is Lavinia Fasano, and I'm a foresight analyst here at the Future Laboratory. I'm joined today by my colleague, Emily Rhodes, a creative foresight analyst, and together we will be sharing a short executive summary of the Innovation Debrief report. As ever, this year's report is packed with essential statistics, analysis from our in-house team of experts, and strategic implications that will help your company navigate the current consumer landscape. Today, we'll be shining a light on 10 of the most innovative companies and campaigns from the first half of 2022. But if you want to read all 50 of the case studies, the report is now available for members of our Trends Intelligence platform, LSN Global. And for non-subscribers, you can purchase the report on the shop floor of our website. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So we're presenting this report more than 2 years on from the outbreak of the pandemic. By now, emergency measures have crystallized into resilient corporate strategies. But as you're all well aware, while the impact of the pandemic is fading in most countries, there has been no shortage of challenges disrupting the world order and businesses this year. With soaring inflation, rising interest rates, and energy supply insecurity, companies are being put to the test once again. But as history has often demonstrated, necessity breeds invention, and the case studies compiled in this year's report already attest to the imaginative new paths that businesses are taking in the face of global instability. And before we jump into some of the case studies, just a quick reminder that you can send any questions you might have to the LinkedIn chat below, and we will be answering these at the end of the presentation.
Yes, we're really excited to hear what you've got to say around the report. We've already received quite a few questions previously, so we're really excited to get stuck into those. But first, we're going to take you through some of our favourite innovations from the 10 key trends that have emerged during the past 6 months. So, risen from a desire to curate more reciprocal relationships with consumers, the first trend from our Innovation Debrief Report 2022 is benefit brands. This explores the change makers reimagining traditional loyalty schemes in favour of more premium memberships. A newcomer to the growing outdoor apparel market is Early Majority, which encourages consumers to invest in a lifetime membership costing £358. This rewards consumers with early access, member pricing, and also a say in the creation of new products. The membership means that the ecologically driven brand can produce less product and encourage more conscious consumption, whilst consumers benefit from greater involvement in the brand and a more personal retail experience.
Fascinating. Yeah, and where Early Majority is really driving forward sustainability goals, we've also seen companies forging more intimate connections with their customers in the name of reviving glamour, opulence, and hedonism. Just a year ago, extravagant displays of wealth might have been considered a bit uncouth, but as the pandemic turned living with less from a lifestyle choice to a global certainty, consumers are increasingly searching for a sense of release during turbulent times. Manor DAO, a hospitality project launched by internet radio station Pool Suite, is an excellent example of this. The DAO, which stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization, will raise money through the sale of NFTs to buy an actual mansion where token holders will be able to lounge, relax, and meet one another. Inspired by classic decadent hotels like Il Pelicano and Chateau Marmont, the founders have invited members to imagine ornately tiled swimming pools and sports cars pulling up on hot gravel.
Yeah, so something else that's benefited from a touch of glamour in 2022 is the hobby. Once reserved for men in sheds, these recreational operations have had a glow up since their explosion during the pandemic. One leisure pursuit in particular that skyrocketed into the zeitgeist was roller skating. So it was fueled by Gen Z, TikTok, their love of nostalgia, and the sport has once again become the epitome of cool. Over in the US, Liberty Ross saw an opportunity to open a roller skating rink at none other than New York's Rockefeller Center. The new hangout is a revival of Flipper's Roller Boogie Disco, which was founded in Los Angeles by Ross's father in the 1980s. Flippers creates a social space for real-life hangouts away from social media, encouraging mindful movement and bonding over a shared love of neon and knee socks.
Love that. And all that talk of roller skating is the perfect segue for our next trend, sensorial strategies, which is all about the demand for physical and stimulating products and experiences after years of pandemic-induced touch deprivation. A recent collaboration between fashion and fragrance company Puig with the Spanish arts museum El Prado exemplifies this. The two companies came together to recreate the fragrance of 10 items that appear in an artwork from the 1600s by Flemish Old Master painter Jan Bruegel the Elder. Far more than just a publicity stunt, the researchers identified 80 plant and flower species in the painting and recreated them using advanced technologies, allowing museum visitors to interact with the historic scents using a touchscreen. And this actually follows a broader trend that we've been seeing recently, where companies are using technology to recreate the scents and smells that were popular in the past, or that may have gone extinct because of climate change.
Yeah, so fascinating, that concept of making that kind of smell bank of past scents. So as consumers are becoming ever more aware of the impact of climate change and its impact on their health, they're looking for science-backed beauty brands to help them combat these environmental stresses that are becoming more increasingly prevalent. So hair care brand Climaplex is here to provide restorative hair care that counteracts these stresses such as UV rays, air pollution, and even air conditioning. They use reparative techniques and technologies to tackle both the internal structure of the hair and repair the surface. And the product range is also priced with accessibility in mind, recognizing that climate change is something that is and will affect everybody, and that they should all be able to have access to these protective products as these effects become ever more intensifying.
Yeah, I think it's something that's going to become more important for all of us. Moving away from beauty to gaming, we've been seeing restaurant and hospitality venues creating a link between online and offline experiences. In fact, the reinvention of the humble internet cafe might just be on the horizon. Looking at one of the most interesting examples, we have the NFT-themed fast food restaurant Bored and Hungry in Los Angeles. The restaurant was set up by hospitality veteran Andy Nguyen, using the intellectual property rights that come with ownership of a Bored Ape Yacht Club NFT. Now let me break that down a bit. That is certainly a mouthful. Owners of a Bored Ape Yacht Club NFT have complete rights to use, repurpose, and even monetize the asset's digital imagery. As a result, Gwen has created packaging, employee uniforms, and even interior decorations that feature his NFTs. The restaurant will also accept cryptocurrencies as a form of payment and includes a Bitcoin ATM machine. As the worlds of Web3 and food converge, this restaurant demonstrates how NFT ownership can be monetized to create future businesses.
Yes, so as we're seeing technology become ever more prevalent on our high streets and in our city centres, so too is science. So no longer buried inside laboratories and behind closed doors, urban spaces are opening up to the field of science to citizens. So the newly opened Tasty Lab in Harlem, New York, has been designed with the local neighbourhood in mind. It boasts communal areas such as retail spaces and restaurants, and really looks to encourage community engagement and offers transparency in a field, like I said, that was once quite privatised. I think over the past year, we've all been quite forced to open our eyes to science due to the pandemic, and I think we've shown an interest in it. And I think it's quite clear that these spaces are going to be ever more wanted from the public.
Yeah, ever more visible too. Just as we're becoming more aware of science and technology, so too are consumers becoming more knowledgeable about design. Considering how much time the pandemic has forced us to spend at home, that shouldn't be too surprising. But some of the innovations included in this year's report are really pushing the idea of decor into new dimensions. AirSign is one of my favorite examples. With innovative product design, inventive references, and unusual marketing for a home appliance company, you'd be completely forgiven for mistaking the brand for some sort of upscale arts venture. In reality, the company makes one product, a vacuum. But it's exactly this kind of messaging that's resonating with younger, design-savvy consumers. I expect we'll be seeing more home appliance brands borrowing from high culture and art soon.
So as we've all been spending so much time from home, something else that has happened as a byproduct of that, we've been working at home and assessing our new work-life balances. As flexible working hours are normalised and the battle of the great re-engagement is still continuing to play out, employers must become more emotive in order to retain their existing talent. A great example of what you can do to help this is from Salesforce, who opened an employee retreat that doubles as a space for company get-togethers. The Trailblazer Ranch in Santa Cruz, California, is situated in a gorgeous forest with chalets and tree houses that offer employees a place to work remotely, but also to forge new connections with both colleagues and nature. You can take part in nature walks, yoga, meditation, art, journaling, and cooking classes to benefit mental wellness and productivity.
That sounds absolutely divine. And just as we're seeing well-being take center stage in the workplace, technology companies are also placing renewed emphasis on mental health. Take, for example, Google's Little Signals concept project, which rethinks the potential of notifications. The disruptive sound of notifications, whether it's an email, a text, or a news alert, has become a subconscious part of everyday life. But maybe they could be a source of calm, not distraction. The Little Signals project explores the potential of haptic design to help its users achieve balance and tranquility when spending time online. It's comprised of 6 conceptual items that use movement, shadows, or sounds to gently nudge people when something might require their attention. Instead of shrill tones or distracting noises, the air item, for example, emits soft pulsing vibrations that can shake the leaves of a nearby plant to inform you of a message. Projects like these could signal a new chapter for the attention economy.
Yeah, so interesting.
So these are just some of our favorite innovations from the first half of 2022, but there are many, many more that can be found within the Innovation Debrief report. We'll touch on where you can find the report when we conclude the presentation, but we now wanted to open up the floor to questions from the audience. Don't forget, you can use the LinkedIn chat room to send questions our way. Our lovely colleagues, Emily and Louise, have been helping us process these. So let's see what we have so far. Okay. So this was sent from someone who registered before, Heather. Emily, I think you'd be great on this topic.
Okay.
The question from Heather is, many of us live and work in cities. What new innovations could create the most impact for the future of cities?
Okay, so I think this is a really good example of looking at our Sidewalk Science trend that we just went over in the report. So this was exploring like science in urban environments, but also developments. I think there's two key factors here to what innovations can do. I think if you look at the sort of involving local residents in developments of new spaces, I think that's a key factor, but then also the value of like an ecological focused development as well, which is thinking sort of broader scale. So if you think of like cities as more of a complex ecosystem, and they have rippling effects on all the people that live there, both humans and wildlife, then I think you'll start to see that like function of a new level of harmony if you consider all residents of the cities. Yeah, and definitely innovators are going to have to look outside the norm of their structures, whether it be in retail or food or like urban planning and development, to sort of really, innovate in this space.
Yeah,
completely
so
restructuring it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've been doing a lot of research on the idea of interspecies design and monitoring that. And I think there's a couple of examples of that in the report. So yeah. Should we look at another question here?
Okay, I think this one's good for you. So Lavinia, what initiatives are you seeing at the intersection of neo-collectivism and the metaverse?
Okay, and this one's from Metra.
Metra, yes.
Well, it's a really interesting question, I think, because it's really all too easy to forget that the Web3 space is more than just JPEGs selling for millions of dollars. I think what's happening with DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, is very interesting. So put simply, a DAO is a digitally native community whose members pool together their resources to achieve a sort of common goal or common ambition. And the hierarchies in these organizations are not very traditional at all. So, with Manor DAO, the case study that we mentioned earlier before, that's about individuals pooling together their funds to bring back this idea of kind of old world hospitality, which is totally great. But we've also seen some more kind of democratic applications of the technology too. There's this great DAO called Dirt DAO, which was really started by a series of journalists and writers who are trying to advocate for change in an industry that can be exploitative and poorly compensated. So that's all about kind of advocating for change within that sector. So yes, with the DAO organizations, there's actually a lot of kind of radical thinking and radical ideas coming through, rethinking the idea of capitalism, but also restructuring traditional hierarchies. So yeah, a lot of neo-collectivism within the Web3 space.
That's very exciting space.
Yeah, definitely. We have another one here from Gabriele.
Okay.
And he asks, how do you evaluate top innovations for their potential positive impact on people or planet, or for their business potential, or maybe a bit of both?
Okay, so I say we look for two things really, newness, but then impact. So yes, we love to feature any innovations, and we highly regard innovations to do with sustainability or social justice and that have a big impact on communities. But I think what we're really looking for, like fundamentally, is disruption, and how that campaign or product or new brand is really going to disrupt its industry or even like ripple across sectors. So yeah, I think these radical innovations are the things that push society forward after all, and that's really what we've chosen to put into the report.
Yeah, and that might actually answer Ben's question and Celine's question as well. Getting a couple of questions here about what our typical workflow is in terms and how we determine which innovations are significant to the future.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I'll ask you another one now. This is quite a big question. It's from Becky. So globalization versus localization, which one are we more headed to, in your opinion?
Oh my goodness.
It's a big one.
It's a big one. Well, I think if you were to look at, for example, what is happening in the fashion industry, everyone, I think, really thought that the pandemic would be the end of the destination runway show, for example. So the idea of a fashion house flying out, their top clients to some remote destination, that practice is still very much alive and kicking, even though everyone thought it might stop after the pandemic, or that we might reassess what our needs are as fashion consumers. Most recently you have Jacques Mus doing a show in Hawaii, you have Dior doing a show in Korea. So if you look at kind of the global fashion market, I would say that still very much exists.
Yeah.
But if we were to look at some of the innovations in this year's report, looking at something like climate combative skincare, and beauty, which is all about creating these hyper specific kind of calibrated formulas that are targeting really specific environmental stressors. So this idea that you could purchase a serum that's been developed to target the air quality that you might have on your street. So that's a really hyper local approach. And if we think about even, I don't know, just thinking about flippers, the roller skating rink on the Rockefeller Center, that's really about kind of taking this, what some people might consider to be a kind of tourist trap, and really infusing it with these kind of more local characteristics that might actually draw in people who live in New York, and instead of just tourism. So I think when you're thinking about something like globalization or localization, it's really important to kind of take it kind of case by case or sector by sector, and kind of analyze what's happening in each of those instances, as it were.
Yeah, definitely.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a big one.
Okay.
Let's see. So many good questions here.
I know we've got quite
It's really hard to choose. Okay, I have one for Emily.
Okay.
Which is, what do you think the role of technology in innovation is? Are the two inevitably interlinked? Can innovation happen independent of tech advancement?
I think technology and innovation have always been thought of as intrinsically linked. And that's sort of like rapid, sort of future-facing drive forward for technology. But I think ignoring non-technical innovations, you'd be taking away a lot of the ones we featured in this report. So if you're thinking about recreation operations, it's really a step back from, if we're talking about technology from a digital social media perspective. And it's kind of that desire to, instead make real life connections and partake in activities that provide a more traditional sense of wellness. And I think it's also seen as that kind of digital detox, which you can also see in event abodes, which is very It's more about design. It's not necessarily as much technology in there. I think dismissing innovations as only technical would you'd be ignoring half of them.
Yeah, fascinating. I have a question here from Lodi. It's a bit of a long one, but they're asking, what are your views about the whole NFTs metaverse being more of an in-crowd thing or bubble instead of for a broader audience, which I think is really, really interesting. And obviously, as you're all aware, the cryptocurrency and NFT market have kind of taken a really, really sharp nosedive in the last couple of weeks. And although the space has kind of encountered and been through bear markets before, I really wouldn't feel confident enough to speculate on exactly what will happen. But answering hopefully Lodi's question, I feel fairly certain that the one thing that will survive is the technology, whether that's NFTs or the blockchain. I mean, if you think about the ability of an NFT to kind of guarantee something like artificial scarcity within a digital space, and think about the value that could bring to something like gaming or virtual fashion, it's hard to see that those kinds of innovations will disappear. But what I do think might cool down at the very least for a little while is this idea of a very bloated market for these kinds of profile picture projects that sell for millions of dollars. Maybe, those kinds of projects won't command the same prices, but I do think that the technology will survive in some capacity. And so I think personally that it will go beyond a kind of bubble, an in-crowd thing, because these technologies will most likely be integrated into our everyday lives as consumers. And you're really seeing kind of a lot of luxury brands in particular really doubling down, even though it is such a bear market right now. I mean, you can think of Tiffany's, for example, really investing a lot, even though, the market's kind of crashing. So I feel like this is a moment of consolidation and reflection for the Web3 space, and we'll see kind of where we emerge on the other side.
Yeah, it's definitely here to stay, but what it's going to look like in a year to 5 years, I think, will change quite dramatically.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got another question here.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. So not about innovation, that's fine. What are your tips on joining the world of forecasting?
Oh, well, this is possibly the perfect opportunity to promote our most recent Trends and Foresight Masterclass.
Yes.
With our co-founder, Martin Raymond. He lays it out very, very well on some tips on how to join the industry. But for just anyone listening, I think being informed, just reading everything, kind of scouring the internet is a good place to start. And when you're thinking about trends, really making sure that you're seeing them happen on a kind of a global stage, not just something that you might be observing in, a global city that you might be living in. So yeah, some of my tips. I don't know what you think, Em.
I would say, I'll repeat something that Martin Raymond, our co-founder, says all the time, is about keeping an open mind. If you're going to look at something with a set opinion of your view of the world, then you'll never learn anything new. So yeah, always mind open and expect the unexpected.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, and I think this will be our last question here, but I'll pose this one to you, Emily.
Okay.
What do you think the main drivers of wellness will be? This is from Mariana.
Okay, so we have just released our latest beauty, health and wellness report, Accredited Beauty, which is really worth a look at. It focuses on the sort of trend of, like I mentioned in climate combative beauty, consumers really wanting science-backed brands. They're more open to science, and it's less about all natural, safe ingredients, and it's more like technical. Consumers, are wanting to use chemicals in their hair. They're not afraid to use chemicals in their skincare anymore. So I think that's a big thing, and sort of like consumer mindsets are changing massively in that space. In terms of wellness, we know that consumers are demanding a lot more. If you look at the Emotive Employers trend that we talked about, and it's all about like the work-life balance, consumers are demanding a lot more from their employers. And I think sort of taking ownership of their health and wellness and knowing what they want, and brands are having to, give them that. But definitely check that out. You can find the report on our shop, or if you're a member, you'll be able to download that from LSN Global as well.
Yeah, lots of great insights on the idea of post-natural beauty, accredited beauty, kind of science and beauty converging into one.
Yes.
So I think that's all we'll have time for today. Just go here. So that's it for today. That was just a very short introduction to our Innovation Debrief 2022 report. If you want to delve into the full 50 campaigns, you can purchase the full report now at thefuturelaboratory.com. If you're already a member of our Trends Intelligence platform, LSN Global, you can download the report for free at lsnglobal.com. And if you're interested in getting more access to today's insights, you can become a member of LSN Global. Members get access to all of our downloadable trends, intelligence PDF reports before anyone else. They can also access research across 21 plus industry sectors, including all new macro trends, strategic worksheets for your teams, and executive summaries. LSN members can also view our webinars on demand at any time, alongside ethnographic research and daily statistics, and of course, free access to the Future Laboratory community. You can find out more about membership or book a demo via the link in the chat. And lastly, you can also book the Innovation Debrief presentation as a presentation for your company, either virtually or in person. And that's all for today. Thank you for joining our Innovation Debrief LinkedIn Live. We hope to see you all again soon.